welcome to the Hustle to Wealth podcast. I'm Imani Barare, your host and founder of the Wealth Fast Circle. This podcast is a safe space for ambitious African women in the diaspora who've worked hard to get where they are and are ready to move beyond survival and build real financial freedom. This is the playbook for first-generation wealth builders, the guide I wish I had in my personal wealth building journey in a foreign country. Do subscribe and leave a review on all the platforms you're listening to us on. In today's episode, we begin with two questions that I've personally wrestled with for a while. One, do we really need another financial literacy podcast? And more importantly, why a podcast specifically focused on African women in diaspora? After all, there are already thousands of podcasts about money, investing, and financial independence. So why create another one? The answer begins with a story, my immigration story. I moved to the United States over 10 years ago. The opportunity to relocate from Africa to the US was a dream come true. Like many immigrants from Kenya, Nigeria, Uganda, Tanzania, Ghana, and all the other African countries, I arrived with hope, ambition, and the belief that if I worked hard enough, everything will eventually fall into place. But I quickly realized that money worked very differently here. To start with, finding a job in my career field was impossible. Negotiating salary felt intimidating, especially when you have no reference point for what people in your field are earning. And when you're new in a country, sometimes you're not negotiating from a position of confidence. You're negotiating from a position of urgency because you just need to work. Then came the practical realities of life, finding housing. Trying to rent an apartment without a credit history was a nightmare. Being asked to pay multiple months of rent upfront as security. Trying to understand how the credit system works. Even something as simple as buying a car felt confusing. I remember walking into a roadside car lot, trying to figure out prices, paperwork, insurance, all while feeling like I was missing information that was vital to this process. Everything felt unfamiliar. Everything felt intimidating. And when everything around you feels new, survival becomes priority. The first 5 years of my life in the United States were purely about survival. The routine became go to work, pay rent, pay other bills. My dreams, including travel, became far off. Investing was not even part of the equation. Then I entered what I call my financial education phase. One day, I was having a conversation with a friend who's a bit older about employee benefits and how confusing they were when I first started navigating the corporate world. She looked at me with what I initially took to be curiosity and casually said, "I hope you've been maxing out your 401k." I must have looked confused because I didn't have a clue what she meant. She paused, then explained that I needed to reach out to HR as soon as possible and set up my 401k to at least match what the employer offered. This was after 3 years of being with this company. I had missed out on free money because I lacked information. This moment shifted my perspective. Until then, I thought of work simply as earning a paycheck. But that conversation planted a different idea in my mind. We often think we are working for money, yet the real goal is to make our money work for us. This instance pushed me to start consuming personal finance education. Taking advantage of my commute to and from work, I listened to podcasts from well-known financial experts, watched YouTube channels about investing, read highly recommended books about financial independence. I paid for courses about budgeting, debt elimination, and wealth building frameworks. I took some church programs as well. To show how serious I was about this journey, I joined a merry-go-round, a chama, as we call it in Kenya, or susu in Nigeria, in an effort to participate in collective investments with other women. To be fair, this resource helped me expand my financial vocabulary. I gained confidence in that I could comfortably teach the 101 of financial literacy. And for a while, I thought I was doing everything right. I thought I was on the right track. I had moved beyond just saving money and was slowly but surely investing. In my naivety, I could already see my dream of traveling the world coming true. Then COVID hit. I remember sitting on the couch in my apartment in New York City in April 2020, looking at my bank accounts. As I went through the numbers, the emergency fund, savings account, and the investments, including the 401k and my brokerage account, I was forced to confront a harsh reality. Like many people during this pandemic period, I had to ask myself, how long could I survive if my income stopped today? My heart sank. Despite working for over a decade, despite consuming hours and hours of financial education material, despite making investments that I believed were solid, my actual savings and investments were far below what I will need to sustain myself and support family for a prolonged period of time without income if needed. This realization scared me. I was actually terrified. I felt lost. I was in a foreign country, far from family and everything familiar. I'm sure my friends will have helped, but I didn't want to burden them, as they were also trying to come to terms with the pandemic. On paper, I had done the right things, but reality felt different. One question kept echoing in my mind. Why hadn't all the knowledge I had gathered over the years translated into real, tangible wealth? The kind that provides a true safety net. I had the information, but did not have the security that comes generational wealth. Hustle had gotten me here, but it will not get me to financial freedom. How could I be doing everything right and still feel so far behind? If you're an ambitious African immigrant woman, educated, skilled, hardworking, have a business, you've had that moment when you feel financially unsettled and sometimes even burnt out. You're not bad with money. You budget, save, and have a side hustle, and yet you're still in survival mode. Once things began to stabilize after COVID, I made a decision. I needed clarity. I started seeking guidance from personal finance professionals. I even hired a financial advisor to help me answer the one big question. What is my freedom number? And what is the fastest, most realistic path to reach it? I never wanted to find myself in this same predicament again, vulnerable if the economy shifted or another crisis appeared. The more conversations I had with experts, financial advisors, planners, and other professionals, the more I began to understand that my situation was not random. It came down to a few specific factors. Number one, the reason my financial freedom was dragging behind was because of execution delay. Wealth, at its simplest definition, requires two main things: resources and time. And for many immigrants, both are normally delayed. Second, it became evident that our context as African immigrants is lacking from the existing financial literacy narrative. Investing for many African women in diaspora often starts later due to several factors, including language barrier, de-skilling, immigration-related uncertainty, family obligations across borders, and limited access to culturally relevant financial education. A lot of the financial advice on mainstream channels assumes certain things, including that you already understand the financial system and that you started building wealth early. Third, the emotional and psychological relationship we have with money. Many Africans that migrate to diaspora carry financial memories that shape how we make decisions. Some of us grew up seeing families lose property due to debt. So, when someone says leverage debt, our brain hears danger. Some of us come from economies where banks collapsed overnight. So when someone says, just trust the financial system, our instincts hesitate. Some of us saw savings wiped out by inflation, Ponzi schemes masquerading as investment schemes that failed, or property purchases that never materialized because title deeds disappeared. So, when someone says, just take more financial risk, our mind, body, and soul remember the cost of the risk and we recoil. This is not ignorance, this is lived experience. And when financial advice ignores lived experience, intentionally or not, it creates internal dissonance that keeps us stuck. Lastly, there was a huge cultural mismatch. The advice, mainstream advice out in the market, was hyper individualistic. It says, focus on yourself, cut off anyone who asks for money, protect your peace. However, here's the truth: many African cultures work differently. We were raised on values that are centered around community. We were raised to share responsibility. We celebrate around collective success. Helping family is seen as honor and not weakness. We thrive when our families thrive. Helping each other is not a burden, it's a virtue. These values are woven into who we are. I remember growing up, there was a saying, if you educate a girl, you've educated the entire village. The same is true with wealth. As a woman, more so an African woman, we don't just build wealth for ourselves. We build so that our families and our communities can rise with us. That perspective, that value system, it changes everything about how we approach and view wealth and success. So, after some serious soul searching, I arrived at a conclusion. Yes, and yes, we do need another financial literacy podcast, and we need one that is specifically geared towards African women in diaspora. While mainstream financial advice is valuable, it is often incomplete for the financial realities of many African women in diaspora. The fundamentals are key. Have a budget, save consistently, invest prudently, build assets. But here's the thing: what's often missing is our context, our accountability, and the practical steps that work for our reality. That is why Hustle to Wealth exists. Our mission is threefold. First, to make the wealth building journey smoother for you than it was for me. Let me save you some time, energy, and resources. Second, to close the gap between knowing and doing, helping you turn information into action through mindset shifts and strategies that stick. And third, to contextualize financial advice specifically for African immigrant women in the diaspora. This will be achieved through sharing our stories, our struggles, and our successes, so that you can see yourself in the journey and know that you are not alone and it is all possible. Ladies, let me leave you with this wealth quote for today. When knowledge meets community, it fosters accountability and accelerates progress. If this conversation resonated with you, subscribe to the podcast, share with another amazing African woman in the diaspora, leave us a comment, and share your money story. Follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook at Hustle to Wealth Podcast. I'm your host, Imani Barare, and this is where we move from hustle to wealth. See you next time.